Okay, so now we're going to do some case studies on brain injury. Make sure that you are looking at the slides from the first part of the biological section that has the information about where different functions are in the brain. You could also have your reading out, the brain the nervous system reading with the pictures and the descriptions of what's going on. I'm going to ask you to pause the video periodically and answer the questions yourself before you listen to me say the answers. Remember that you working on something and solving a problem first is better than just listening to me tell you stuff in terms of learning. So, take the time to do it. It'll be worth it. So we're going to do a name that brain injury. And first, just a little bit about brain injury. Damage to certain areas of the brain can cause specific deficits in behavior. And so you see the link between brain and behavior by examining which areas of the brain are damaged and what happens to behavior. And just remember that it's not exact. Our behavior draws from many different areas of our brain, but we do know that some things are mostly localized in one area, and so we see these certain kinds of effects when we have brain injury. So with brain injury, you have what we call a lesion. And a lesion it sounds like a thing, like a tumor, but really what it is tissue destruction. So it's when something happens to part of your brain, and it either because of either surgery or something like that, on purpose, or an actual, accident injury, okay? Or a stroke or disease. Disease can cause it too. So we're going to go through a few case studies and just think about which area of the brain might be affected based on these what you know about these case studies. It doesn't give you a lot of information, but a patient comes to emergency room because she's unable to feel anything touching the right side of her body. So what area of the nervous system do you think is involved when she's unable to feel anything on the right side of her body? So pause the video and write it down. So after you write it down, we'll talk about it. So here we're going to think about, we've got sides, and you may have read or heard me talk about how when one side of the brain is affected, it actually affects the opposite side of the body. So we've got the right side of the body, and so that means the left side of the brain is affected. And then which lobe or which region, remember touch, parietal, okay? Parietal lobe, left parietal lobe is the answer for this one, okay? A patient visits his doctor because he's having increasing difficulty controlling his emotions and sensations of hunger. He feels afraid during the day, although there's nothing dangerous or scary happening, and he's sometimes feeling very aggressive for no apparent reason. So what area of the nervous system do you believe is involved? And give some detail. Go ahead and pause. And okay, after you've written it down, let's go to talking about the amygdala. So this is the most likely. There's definitely other factors to consider, and hopefully you've thought about all of those as well. But the amygdala is probably the most likely here in regulating emotion and aggression. Okay. So case example. 3, we've got a stroke in which is bleeding in an area of the brain. And after the stroke, she's unable to see things towards the left side of her body, even though her eyes both seem to be working fine. So go ahead and pause it. Think about it. Okay, so left side of the body, right? So that's right side of the brain. A lot of students get confused on this one because they're like, wait, her eyes are working, I don't understand. And the thing that they're not understanding is that the functioning of your eyes, your ears, your hands touching, all your senses, they can still work. But if your brain can't make sense of what's coming in, then it doesn't matter how well your eyes work. Okay, so the occipital lobe is affected, and the eyes themselves are functioning fine. This was not an injury to the eye. This is an injury to the brain. So the right occipital lobe would be the answer to this one. Okay. So now this one, you're going to have to pause the video for a lot longer and go ahead and fill in the blanks for each one of these, and then we'll go over them. Okay, so let's go over these. The first one, seeing bright flashes of light even when eyes are closed, would be occipital lobe. No longer comprehend the meaning of what people say. So let's think about processing, right? Comprehending the meaning. Where are we processing what people are saying? So temporal lobe is where we would think about processing sound. We might think about language being in the frontal lobe, and that would be part of could be part of your answer as well, for sure. Amygdala for C, feeling afraid or aggressive for no apparent reason. Parietal for touching the right side of the body. You would go left parietal for this one, right? Hippocampus can no longer learn new facts. So hippocampus, remember hippo-hypo-Amy and college campus and memory. So this is a memory issue. So, and then having difficulty with feeling too hot or cold. So this is temperature regulation. Remember, regulation is sort of like managing something, right? So the hypothalamus would be the answer here. Hypothermia helps you remember the hypothalamus. And then having trouble walking, feeling unbalanced and wobbly. We're going to think about cerebellum when we're thinking about feeling unbalanced. Remember, the cerebellum is right here in the back of your, like at the bottom above the brainstem. Okay. All right, hopefully you did all those and got most of them, and if not, go back and check them out in your book, in your reading. And just something to think about here, which brain area would you consider the most terrible to lose? So think about which any of these are something that, would be the absolute worst. And, just a comment in general about brain injury. So, when this happens, when brain injury happens, it's not necessarily like a one-to-one relationship, right? Say a part of your brain is removed for some reason or damaged or something, and those functions seem to be lost. Sometimes it's not so much that you lost something, but that you lost the ability to inhibit something. So, for example, impulsivity. Let's say inhibiting means slow down, stop, right? You're like saying things. So if you're going to say, you might think inappropriate things, but Usually you are able to stop yourself from saying it out loud. So if part of your brain is damaged that kind of helps with inhibition, then you might do that. You might say things, blurt things out loud, right? That really you shouldn't be saying out loud. So things like that. Things like involuntary movements of your body or your muscles. Involuntary, normally our muscles are voluntary movements, but sometimes you might have involuntary, and there might be an area of your brain that is meant to inhibit movement and stop it when you're not intending to make it happen. But that part of your brain isn't quite functioning the way it's supposed to. Okay. Okay. But that's all for now.